Picture this. You finally buy your dream beach house, a quiet sanctuary where the only sound is the tide. Then you find out 18 people are currently on a bus heading your way for a 48-hour surprise reunion. The architect of this chaos? My own mother. She didn't call. She didn't ask. She just handed out my keys like party favors. But what she forgot is that it's my name on the deed, and I have a very different plan for this weekend.
My name is Lily Rose, and I've always been the reliable one in the family. You know the type. The daughter who remembers every birthday, the sister who fixes the tech issues, and the one who finally saved enough to buy a small, weathered cottage right on the edge of the Pacific. It was my escape, my silence. 3 days ago, I was sitting on my porch, watching the fog roll over the water, clutching a mug of coffee. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from our extended family group chat, a chat I usually keep on mute for the sake of my mental health. I swiped it open, and my heart didn't just drop, it hit the floor. There was a photo of a chartered minibus. Underneath, my mother had typed, "Almost there. Get the guest beds ready, Lily Rose. The whole clan is coming for a 2-day surprise reunion. 18 of us. See you at sunset." I sat frozen. 18 people? My house has 2 bedrooms, one of which is currently my home office. I hadn't heard a word about this. No phone call, no text, not even a, "Hey, do you mind?" My mother had effectively annexed my private property and turned it into a free resort for cousins I hadn't spoken to since I was 10. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. She was likely mid-laugh on that bus, bragging about her daughter's generosity. I looked around my peaceful living room. I thought about my white linen sofa, my collection of rare vinyl records, and my pristine kitchen. Then I imagined 18 people, including 6 toddlers and my Uncle Bob, who hasn't met a carpet he couldn't spill red wine on, descending upon my sanctuary. A wave of heat climbed up my neck. For years, I had let my mother push the boundaries. I let her comment on my career, my clothes, my life choices. But this, setting up a full-scale invasion of my home without a single word of consultation, that was the final line in the sand. I didn't scream. I didn't send an angry text back. Instead, I stood up, walked to my front door, and turned the deadbolt. Then, I grabbed my car keys. If my mother wanted to host a grand reunion at a beach house, she was more than welcome to try. But she seemed to have forgotten one tiny, crucial detail. I'm the only one with the alarm code. I pulled out of my driveway just as the sun began to dip, heading toward a boutique hotel 30 miles up the coast. As I drove, I saw a large white bus flickering in my rearview mirror, turning onto my narrow coastal road. My phone began to explode. The silence in my car was a sharp contrast to the digital storm erupting on my dashboard. My phone was vibrating so hard against the center console, it sounded like a trapped insect. First it was my mother, then my sister, Sarah, then an unknown number, likely one of the cousins who had already realized the front gate was locked. I kept my eyes on the road. I checked into a small secluded hotel where the lobby smelled like lavender and expensive salt spray. After I closed the door to my room, I finally picked up the phone. 27 missed calls, 42 texts. The group chat was a war zone. It started with upbeat messages. "We're here. Open up, Lily," to confusion. "Is the bell broken?" And finally to my mother's frantic typing. "Lily Rose, this isn't funny. We can see your car isn't in the driveway. Where are you? We have the kids outside and it's getting cold." I felt a momentary pang of guilt when I thought about the toddlers. But then I remembered my mother had the itinerary for this trip planned for weeks. She had booked a bus. She had coordinated 18 schedules. She had plenty of time to ask me, and she chose not to because she knew I'd say no. She wanted to force my hand. I typed a single message back to the group. "I'm away on a private retreat for the weekend." Since no one checked if the house was available, I assumed you all had booked a local hotel for your reunion. Enjoy the beach. The explosion was instantaneous. My mother called me immediately. This time, I answered. "Lily Rose," she shrieked. I didn't even have to hold the phone to my ear. "What is the meaning of this?
We are standing on your porch. Your Aunt Martha has a bad hip, and the kids are hungry. Turn this car around right now and give us the code." "I'm 2 hours away, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "And even if I were there, I wouldn't be opening the door. You planned a party in my house without inviting the owner." "That's not a reunion. That's a trespass." "It's family," she yelled. "How can you be so selfish? I told everyone you were hosting. I promised them a home-cooked seafood dinner." "Then I suggest you find a restaurant that serves 18, I replied, "and a hotel that has vacancies. It's peak season, so you might want to start calling now." I hung up. I ordered room service, a quiet dinner for one, and sat by the window. I knew they weren't going anywhere yet. My mother is nothing if not stubborn. She would wait on that porch, convinced I would crack. She would use the family card until the deck was empty. But as I watched the moonlight hit the ocean from my hotel balcony, I realized for the first time in 30 years, I didn't care about being the good daughter. I cared about being the person who respected herself. Around 10 p.m., I got a text from Sarah. She was always the one Mom used as a scout. "Lily, seriously, Mom is crying. Uncle Bob is trying to find a way to jimmy the back window. Just send the code. We'll clean up, I promise." I narrowed my eyes. Jimmy the window. They weren't just guests anymore. They were intruders. I picked up the phone and dialed the local non-emergency police line for my coastal town. I knew the sergeant there. I'd bought him coffee a few times at the local bakery. "Hey, Sergeant Miller, it's Lily Rose from the cottage on North Shore. Listen, I'm out of town, and my security cameras are showing a group of people trying to break into my back window." There's a specific kind of silence that follows a bold move. After I hung up with Sergeant Miller, I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, my heart thumping a rhythmic drum against my ribs. I wasn't being malicious. I was setting a boundary. But in my family, a boundary was treated like a declaration of war. 10 minutes later, the group chat went from angry to panicked. "There's a squad car here," Sarah texted, her font practically screaming. "Lily, did you call the police on your own mother?" I didn't reply. I opened my laptop and logged into my home security feed. The night vision glowed in eerie shades of green and gray. I saw the minibus idling at the curb, its headlights cutting through the coastal mist. I saw my relatives huddled on the porch like a group of bedraggled shadows. And then there was Sergeant Miller, his flashlight beam cutting through the dark as he approached my Uncle Bob, who was, as predicted, standing on a plastic crate, trying to mess with the kitchen window latch. I watched through the camera's speaker as Miller's voice boomed. "Step away from the window, sir. The owner reported a break-in." My mother rushed forward, waving her arms, her voice high and frantic. "I'm the mother. This is my daughter's house. There's just been a misunderstanding." Miller didn't budge. He's a man who values paperwork over pedigree. "Unless your name is on the deed, where the owner calls me to vouch for you." The owner is away and was very clear. No guests were authorized. The sight of my mother, the woman who had spent decades steamrolling over my life, finally hitting a wall she couldn't charm or yell her way through, was cathartic. By 11:30 p.m., the bus lights faded from the camera feed. They had finally left. The group chat, however, was far from quiet. The family reunion chat had been renamed by my mother to the Heartbreak Group. "I hope you're happy, Lily Rose," one aunt wrote. "We are currently crammed into a roadside motel 2 towns over. The kids are sleeping on the floor. I thought we raised you better than this." My mother sent a final stinging text. "You've embarrassed me in front of the entire family. You've turned your back on your own blood for the sake of a house. Don't bother calling me when you realize how lonely that cottage actually is." I felt the sting, sure. The good girl inside me wanted to apologize, to pay for their motel rooms, to make it right. But then I looked at the photos they were posting. Photos of them suffering in a perfectly decent motel, and I realized something. Not one of those 42 texts asked why I was upset. Not one person said, "Sorry we showed up uninvited." To them, I wasn't a person with a life and a home. I was a resource. A free hotel. I turned off my phone, tucked it into the bedside drawer, and slept for 10 hours straight. The next morning, I drove back to my house. The fog had cleared, and the sun was sparkling off the waves. When I pulled into my driveway, the silence was beautiful. But as I walked up to my front porch, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My mother hadn't just left. She had left a parting gift. I stood at my front door, the key trembling slightly in my hand.
There, resting against the wood, was a large, heavy box wrapped in a familiar, faded floral gift paper,
The kind my mother kept in her hallway closet for special occasions. Attached to the top was a note in her sharp, elegant cursive. Since you prefer your house empty, here is everything of mine that was still in it. We won't be back to clutter your life again.
I carried the box inside. My house felt different, wider, colder, but strangely lighter.
I opened the box expecting a collection of sentimental weapons meant to make me cry. Instead, I found old photo albums, a handmade quilt my grandmother had given me that my mother had been storing, and a set of silver spoons that had been in our family for 3 generations. She wasn't just leaving. She was returning my history as if it were a debt she was settled with. She wanted to scrub her presence from my world to show me exactly how lonely independence could be. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by these relics. For a moment, the silence was deafening. But then I looked out the window. A pod of dolphins was breaking the surface of the water in the distance. The salt air filled my lungs, and for the first time in my life, it didn't feel like I was suffocating under someone else's expectations. I realized then that my mother's gift wasn't a punishment. It was my freedom. She had handed me the keys to my own life, thinking the weight of them would crush me. She didn't realize I had been practicing carrying that weight for years. I didn't reply to the heartbreak group. I didn't defend myself to my aunts. I simply exited the group chat. I spent the rest of the afternoon putting the quilt on my bed and placing the photo albums on my shelf, not as her property, but as mine. I made a single cup of tea, sat on my porch, and watched the tide come in. My house was quiet, yes, but it wasn't empty. It was finally full of me. Where are you all watching this from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments. End question. Would you have called the police on your own family, or would you have let them in? If you found peace in this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more from LilyCalmStories.